Good morning, everybody. My name is Lynn Scarff. I'm Director of Science Gallery. I'm absolutely delighted to be here with you this morning. And I was here for the speakers yesterday, so I'm going to try and bleed in some of the ideas that were there yesterday. So the space that I come from, Science Gallery, is young. We're just 8 years old, and we are a space that's about bringing arts and science together. So we develop 4 new exhibitions a year on broad themes. We have no permanent collection. Our target audience is 15 to 25-year-olds. And to give you a kind of sense, I just have a short video here, which, should hopefully play. There we go.
To be honest, the Science Gallery has kind of changed my life in a strange kind of way, because it really allowed me to engage with the general public.
It just sparked off the love of science again. It made me remember why I'd started, why I'd done it in the first place.
Visually beautiful, and there was just so much to learn.
Every time succeed in surprising me with the way to do things.
So hopefully that 40 seconds has done most of my talk for me and given you a very quick, sharp insight into what it feels like in Science Gallery for our audience critically. And that's really what this is all about, what these 2 days are really about. So how are we different? What is it that we do? So we have an ever-changing program. We have an open call process in terms of how we put our exhibitions together, and I'll talk more about that. We have a focus on young adults. We're based within a university, Ireland's leading research university, but we're bringing the research that's happening in the university together with the art and design community, health community, in terms of social justice in the area and local community, and producing events and exhibitions together. We have a Leonardo group who effectively are our brain trust, 50 thought leaders from arts, science, theatre, media, entrepreneurship, journalism, who feed in and help us develop our programs each year. We're incredibly accessible. We have a free entry model. Over 43% of our audience will be what we call non-dominant learners. They're people from generally disadvantaged areas. And we have a very unique approach to public engagement in terms of the point at which our exhibitions hit the floor, they are still a work in process. So our audience is interrogating the work, changing the work, developing it more with the artists and the designers and scientists involved. And finally, we have a focus on the future. We're very forward-facing in the themes that we do. So I really see that Science Gallery is part of an emerging sense, and this came up a lot yesterday. A lot of the speakers had very similar points on their slide, but it's this movement of museums, galleries, cultural spaces from being spaces that are doing things to and for our audience, that are actually doing things with their audience. Right, so everything that we're producing in Science Gallery is in collaboration with our audience. We've moved from being a content provider to somebody that's actually a creative platform. We're a meeting place. We're less about a particular visitor experience. We're networked. We tend to be fast and agile. Sometimes we're a lot smaller. But I think all of these attributes really speak to what a lot of this conference is about, which is about that kind of in-depth engagement with your audience. And in the context of this talk, I'm going to talk a little bit about what that means for the leadership of the organization. But what does that look like? What does that actually feel like? How do we produce program in that context? This particular slide shows a group of students who produced an exhibit for a show called Blood that we did in 2013. So blood is a big, nice, juicy theme. means something to artists, means something to scientists, means something to stand-up comedians, to surgeons, to immunologists. Everybody can get a piece of that action. And so from that then, we developed an open call. These students put together an exhibition. Some were science students, some design students, and they were looking at the distribution of blood type. So they developed a piece. This is a piece that was developed, May the Horse Live in Me, in a collaboration with a French artist, Marianne Janet, and a biomedical scientist in Paris, produced in Ljubljana, where she injected herself with horse blood. This is a piece by Mark Quinn, a globally renowned artist. This is his work called Legion. And this is a piece called Black Market Pudding, which is many of you know, a sausage that's produced from blood, but the pig that was used to produce this wasn't killed like they normally are. The blood was injected from him. So why am I showing you all of these pieces? Well, because I think it shows you the kind of tapestry of work that we get in Science Gallery. So you can walk, as a 19-year-old, you can walk into Science Gallery, potentially see some of your own peers' work beside a work by a globally renowned artist like Mark Quinn, beside a work by John O'Shea, an upcoming Irish artist, and beside a work by the Health Research Board. And for me, that tapestry, that unique aspect of all of these pieces together, that openness is critical to the success of Science Gallery. And that manifests in lots of different ways. This is a show that we did in 2009 called Infectious Stay Away, where we covered the building in white and barriered it out, and it was around the time of the swine flu outbreak. And that came about because we were approached by one of our Leonardos to do a show called Plague. And we said, Plague, it's a bit depressing, a bit dark. Where can we go with that? So instead we did a show called Infectious, and we talked about infectious laughter and how ideas spread, but we also talked about how disease spreads and about immunology. We've produced works like this, which is Kiss Plate, which was a collaboration between an artist, a visual designer, and an immunologist, where you kissed an agar plate and you got to see the bacterial growth around your lips. People turned them into coasters that they could keep on their desks, and they gave them as Valentine's presents. This particularly foul one over here, just be warned, is somebody who had a beard and a mustache, so let it be said if you're carrying a lot of bacteria on your face. But we also do things, this is a show that we did called Grow Your Own, where we built a level 2 lab within the gallery. This is our first floor gallery space. And then we said to our local community, what are we going to do in here? It can do this, this, and this. What are your ideas? And people collaborated and they got together, and one group approached us and they said, we want to make human cheese. So we did. We made human cheese, and that first photograph was somebody taking a bacterial swipe from underneath their arm, and this is their cheese. But the critical piece about that is that it's always surprising. You know, we're engaging with the audience, and they're bringing new ideas and new works to us. And for that 15 to 25-year-old audience, I can't emphasize how critical it is. Many spaces are struggling getting those audiences into their spaces. You need to be speaking to them. You need to connect with what they're interested in, what's happening in their lives. Give them opportunities for participation, and crucially, surprise the socks off them with some human cheese. So how do we do this? And we were talking about tools, so let's get into that. What do we do? And in Science Gallery, we have a model which we call the idea funnel. So I'm going to bring you through that process and talk a little bit about how we develop ideas. So this is it. It looks very complicated. But suffice to say, let's start at the top. I talked a little bit about the theme. The theme creates alignment. So for us in our organization, blood was the theme. On that theme, then we bring together a curatorial panel. Much to the distaste of my staff, I always say that the Science Gallery team are experts on absolutely nothing at all. The only thing that we are good at is creating compelling experiences. And we rely on curatorial expertise coming in for each of our themes to help us develop the show. So for a show like Blood, we had a curatorial panel that was an immunologist, a hematologist, a surgeon, a bioartist, and an expert on vampires. For our upcoming show next year, which is called Humans Need Not Apply, which is about the artificial intelligence and cognitive computing moving into the professional workforce, also something we talked about yesterday. We have a cyber anthropologist, one of the leading people from Google Cultural Institute, and we also have a robotics expert who are coming in with their ideas on that. So each curatorial panel brings new people and new ideas. At the top of the funnel, this is where we're gathering, and some of that is research projects, some of it are third-level projects connected with the university, and most of it, the bulk of it, is an open call. So about 18 months out from a theme, we put out an open call. That goes out globally. You know, if you look at the map of where we're getting ideas and inputs from, it's quite significant across the world. And with that, you get usually about 300 to 500, depending on how good the theme is, ideas. And then as a programming team, we bring that down to about 80. And then we bring that to our curators. And usually then that gets reduced to a further 20 to 30, and then we start to engage in conversations with the people who have submitted those calls and develop the works. And then we also have invited projects if we're not hitting some of the key areas. So that's the kind of curation and mentoring process. And then crucially, the critical piece about this diagram is that the public engagement piece is at the center. It's not the end point. So when our exhibition goes on the floor, it's not finished. It's still failing. It's still succeeding. Things go wrong. We learn from it. There's spills in the labs. Exhibits break. People are, telling us that something isn't working, something is working. And the way that we do that is that we have what we call mediators, which are young undergraduate students on the floor whose role is not to explain things, and I can't emphasize that enough, but to talk to people, to have conversations, to engage with people who come in to visit us. And it's through that process that critical public engagement piece happens. And you can see our visitors here, and then we have members, and there's a kind of who that sort of feeds back, if you like, then into the idea funnel through our Leonardo group. And then on this side, you see some of the mechanisms by which we do it. And then finally, at the bottom of the funnel, there's this element here of how things get developed. We don't see ourselves as responsible for this, but this can be research publications. So over 15 research papers have been published around work in Science Gallery because it was actually real lab research. You have artworks, you have new social projects that come out of it. Recently, a work that was developed has now gone on to look at cleansing water in an area in India. So they fall out of the project. Usually they're picked up by the project themes and collaborations begin, and that's our creative platform piece. But each point, there's impact, and that's critical. So you have a cultural, commercial, social impact, there's a cultural and educational impact up at the top, and and at the very beginning there's an educational impact in terms of the programming. So, things that seem to work, that make this process work for us. Themes, broad interdisciplinary themes, an open process, being porous, letting ideas come from outside. The concept of the creative platform, shifting from a content provider to a creative platform. Being a cultural incubator. And some challenges, oddly enough, map onto the same ideas. From the theme perspective, some of the scientists that we work with sometimes think that what we do is a bit too fluffy, and some of the artists and designers that we work with think that what we do isn't arty enough. But I think this speaks to a lot of the points that were coming up today, that you have to be brave. You have to say, well, actually, I'm not doing this for you scientists or for you artists. I'm doing this for my audience. I'm doing this for my 15 to 25-year-olds. The open process means that you don't have a straight, lovely linear narrative in terms of your creative process. It's messy. You're looking at it, you're thinking, Jesus, I don't even know what the visitor experience is yet, but you're working together. It's constantly evolving. Creative platform means that we're free entry, but that's really important, but that requires a totally different business model. I won't go into that today, but that's a critical piece about this. And being a cultural incubator is time-consuming. You have to build relationships. There has to be face-to-face interactions. You have to create the space for people to actually meet. And a critic once said about Science Gallery that we were actually just a glorified cafe. We have a very good cafe. And what I wanted to say to them at the time was, thank you so much, that's such a compliment. Yes, we are a glorified cafe because we are a meeting point, we are a meeting place. Yes, we have exhibitions and events, but critically for us, the crucial piece is, how do you bring people from different disciplines together? And my logic for that, why do I get up every morning to do that? Well, we have huge global challenges ahead of us. And fundamentally, I believe that it's not a single engineer or a single artist or an activist. People on their own, with their own mindsets and disciplines, aren't going to solve those problems. It's collaboratively. And so for us as cultural spaces, we have this opportunity to be this meeting point, to be this place that brings people together around those global challenges. And that's what we're trying to do at Science Gallery. The leadership piece. So I've given you a little bit about the model, and that's the organization that I lead. Culture eats strategy for breakfast. Many of you have heard that phrase over and over again. So rather than talking about this strategy and different ideas around strategy and focusing on that within your organization, if there's anything that you do today, I think it's to reflect, what's the culture of your organization? Somebody once said to me, as a leader, the culture of your organization is what happens when you are not there. I think that's a really good point. So what happens when you are not there? If you are the leader of your organization. So some of the ideas that we have in Science Gallery around our culture and our staff and our program and how we produce what we do is this idea of a fearless appetite for experimentation. Is the idea that we're constantly trying to push ourselves forward, knowing that there will be kind of failure along the way, but knowing that we have a hacker spirit. So knowing that we will go out and try again and borrow and beg and take from different areas, and that we aren't beholden to any one specific discipline or specific idea of what art is or what science is. What we're fundamentally interested in is that compelling experience for our audience, is that engagement, is that conversation. And that's our core mission, and that's what we're committed to. Constant connectivity. So within our organization, we're future-facing, we're 20 people, but the reality of it is I can't stay on top of everything that's happening in the world at any one time. And that's why that brainstorming process, that bringing in curators from outside of the organization, that bringing in a new researcher for every theme is critical to that piece. So developing mechanisms within your organization that allow people from outside to work with you and to bring new ideas and to bring new visions that they've seen in other organizations around the world has been really important to that. And I mean, an understanding that our brand is more than a logo. So by that I mean that within our organization, that we all have a deep understanding of what our mission is, what our vision is, how we respond to visitors, how important our audience is, what are the critical pieces, what are the reasons why we're getting up every day to do what we do, and how we can grow that. So Science Gallery now is growing as a global network. We have a Science Gallery opening in King's College in London in 2020, in University of Melbourne in 2021, in Bangalore in India in 2022, and there's conversations happening in Venice and New York as well at the same time. So as this network expands, we're going to have 50 more Leonardos from every other organization, a whole other range of themes and people that we're working with, and we're also touring our exhibitions. So we're now in this point where we have our boundaries are moving further and we have this opportunity to work with more people. And really for us, that offers significant wealth, but it also means how do we communicate that understanding of who we are on a broader scale. I'll leave you with that thought. Thank you so much for listening.